Okay, so we're going to make orange rolls. First thing is that we need, I'm going to make a double batch. So a single batch calls for 1 cup of scalded milk. Therefore, we need 2 cups of scalded milk. So what that means is we're going to put 2 cups of milk on the stove and bring it to just before it boils. And I'll show you what it looks like when it gets to that point. Okay. It kind of makes bubbles. All right, there's 2 cups. I'm gonna just pour it here.
So where did the recipe or where did orange rolls come from?
Well, my mother was the one who introduced us to them. I don't know, quite honestly, where she got the recipe.
And did you guys have them like at special occasions, or was it just all the time?
It wasn't a daily thing. It was more for Thanksgiving and Christmas. And I remember there was one year we had a big party. I think it was not a relative, but a friend of the family in Australia came to the United States to visit. And so they had a big family party with my parents' house, and my aunt and uncles who were right next to them. And I remember my mother made orange rolls, and I don't know how many she made. It was just insane to have many rolls there. So definitely special occasion. While that milk gets up to where it needs to be, the next thing is 1/2 cup of sugar. So we'll do, again, twice. What did I do? Maybe I did the cups up. All right, so we'll do 1/2 cup of sugar, and another half since we're doubling the recipe. And then it also calls for 1/2 cup of shortening. Shortening meaning Crisco. That's what my mother always used. Therefore, that's what I used. So I'm just going to fill up a cup here. it says salt, which I thought was interesting that it doesn't say how much salt, but usually, like with the Bacchus, it's just a pinch of salt. So I'll just do 2 pinches of salt. Let me see. So while that's still getting ready there, the next part is to dissolve 2 yeast cakes in 1/2 cup warm water. So double recipe means 4 yeast cakes. So there's 1, 2, 3. They usually come 3 in a pack, so I'll just cut this one off. Save these for later. So I'm going to dissolve these 4 yeast cakes in 1 cup of warm water. This is getting really close here. I don't know if you want to kind of what this looks like. It's starting to bubble a little bit. We don't want it to boil. It's kind of forming a little bit of a skin there. So then we'll stop and bring it over and just pour it onto the sugar and the shortening. So go ahead and get the yeast started. So I need some warm water, not hot, but warm. So there's a cup of warm water.
And you said it has to be warm water for the yeast to activate?
It has to be warm water for the yeast to work. So then just clip off the corner of each of these packets. Pour the yeast in. Kind of force the yeast down a little bit so it doesn't spill all over. My mother's recipe doesn't call for this, but my sister Danine told me that she had read that putting a teaspoon of sugar in to yeast will activate it faster. So I tried it one year and thought, okay, kind of works. So that's what I do. I'm gonna just stir this up a little bit. And we'll just let the yeast do its thing for a minute. I'll come back over here and mix this up. Keep the shortening so it will dissolve. I don't know if you can hear that or not. You see the sugar is still granulated, and we want to get it to be soft and kind of dissolve it. Since the milk's pretty warm, it helps dissolve things.
Is there a reason why the milk is scalded, or is there? That's just the recipe.
I don't know. That's the recipe. I guess it's just kind of one of those things that you do when you make bread. It just and you want to get the shortening to melt, because then you just have clumps of shortening in the dough. You don't want that. Okay, yeast is started. Looking good. All right, so the next step is to add 2 eggs. Let's see. just break up the yolks. Okay, so we're just kind of waiting on the yeast. See what it's doing. It needs to be a little bit bigger than that before we add it in. So that's basically the recipe. The ingredients other than the flour. So once the yeast is fully activated, we'll add the yeast to this, and then we'll start adding flour. As much flour as it takes to make the dough. Again, it doesn't say how much. Just you do it until. So since I got the sugar. So the yeast has activated, risen. That's a good sign. Hopefully that means that we're gonna have some good, nice risen rolls as well. So just pour this into our mixture. And it's usually best when you're doing the flour to add just a little bit at a time. If you think, well, I'm just going to pour it all in and do it faster, then you've really got a job ahead to get it all incorporated. So just a little bit at a time. And when it's kind of mixed up, then you just add more.
And you said this is just by feel, not by
No measurement here.
measurement.
What you want to have is a soft dough. If you put too much flour in, then your dough and the rolls will be really heavy and dense, and they'll sit on your stomach like a lead pipe.
So besides adding sugar to the yeast, has the recipe evolved at all, or does anybody make them different than what Grandma Moore did?
I've never heard of anything different.
Nobody does sacrilegious things like they do to Bockles.
Well, I don't know. How would you change it? I guess if when you were eating them you wanted to put butter on them or jam or something, that would be sacrilegious.
You like drizzle sugar on them like
No.
other rolls?
No. They're just fine, just the way they are. At least, I think so. I got a group text message from some of my siblings just before Thanksgiving, I think it was. It was Brad who initiated the question. He said, how many orange rolls did Mom make each Thanksgiving? We were all trying to guess. And my best guess was she made about 12 dozen.
Wow.
Yeah. But you have to remember there were 9 of us, well 11 counting my parents. So that took a lot. And I guess my younger brothers and sisters don't remember this, but I guess I must have been a teenager, is what I remember. Mom would always invite her parents and my Uncle Barry, her brother, to come, and I can see in my mind the videos that my dad took of everybody in the kitchen, Mom fixing dinner and all the pies that she had and rolls and, everything. Talking with some of my younger brothers and sisters recently, I realized that I have different memories than they have. They have different memories than I have. Just by virtue of how old we are. Okay, now the best way to do this, I have found, is to, once you get the dough in kind of a sticky state, then we'll put some flour on the board and bring out some of the dough, just like we did with the bakkels. And then slowly incorporate everything. And if you get it on your fingers, you just put your fingers in the flour, and then it will clear it off. And like I said, we don't want too much flour, so you have to be careful that you don't overdo it. And since your grandpa and I have started watching a program on TV, The Great British Baking Show, and there's Paul Hollywood, who supposedly, I guess, his family owned a bakery, and so he's the bakery king, the bread king. And I watch as he teaches them how to make bread, and I never saw my mother doing anything to make sure that the gluten was activated and all of that stuff that they talk about. So sometimes I think, have I kneaded it enough? Have I done what needs to be done? And then of course they prove, or that's what they call it, they prove the bread. And once we get this dough made, we will do a proving, although my mother never called it that. She just called it, we're going to let the dough rise. Okay, so I'm going to add some more here. It's easier to do it in when I was younger. I didn't do it this way, I just did it all at once. But that's when I had more strength. Okay. Don't have that strength anymore. So I'm just getting this so that I can handle it. It's still a little bit sticky, but I'm gonna come back and work through that. When we start to roll it out. And I guess it's just a matter of doing this over and over again that you kind of get a feel for when it's got enough flour and when it's going to come together. And yeah, good dough. I just got some left here in the bowls. I guess you know when you're done with this, when it's not so sticky anymore. It's all come together. And we'll put it in. And then we'll pay attention to what it looks like and about how big it is. And I'm going to put a cloth over it, and it needs to sit for about an hour. And then we'll do the next step, which is to cut out the rolls. Okay, so that's how you make orange roll dough. Okay, so while the dough is still rising, we're going to make the mixture that goes in the on the dough that makes the orange rolls. So it says to mix 1/2 cup sugar and 1/2 cup shortening and the rind of 1 orange. So since we're doubling the recipe, we'll do 1 cup of shortening, 1 cup of sugar, and 2 oranges. Okay? So this is the 1 cup. So 1 cup of sugar. sloppy today. Okay, there's the sugar shortening. We need to mix that all together. Get the oranges. And when you select oranges, try and get oranges that have a pretty good skin to them. You want it to, if it's real smooth, it doesn't come off very well. This is when it starts to smell good. This orange happens to have a little black mark on it, so I'm gonna just kind of cut that away. Doesn't get in there. Don't know what it is. Okay, so there's the orange. sit down to do this. All I'm going to do is just mix it in. This is what we're going to spread on the dough. It's not very comfortable.
Do you want me to do it?
No, just sitting there on that chair is not. When doing this is the sugar's not totally incorporated yet. There's still some that's kind of loose, but there is moisture here in the orange. So when you add it, it has a tendency to bring it all together. And you don't want to skimp on any of this. You want all of it, so that, because this is what really adds the flavor to the rolls. And then you can just peel these oranges and just eat them. Okay, well, it's pretty good, all incorporated. Now I'm just gonna clean up this space a little bit and get the pans ready, and then we'll roll out the dough. I think it's ready. Kind of doubled in size. Therefore, let's see some of this. The reason I'm removing this is that there are pieces of dough in this flour. I don't want those part of the rolls. Okay, so some more flour out. Bring this out of the roll. It feels so good. Feels like it's supposed to.
That's good.
Get it out. You're just going to knead it just a little bit. Get any air out of it or whatever. I don't know how scientific this is. You know. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to divide it into 4, because I've got 4 pans, and I think 4, I may have just a few extra I may have to use on a different plate, but So, and it doesn't have to be exact, but we obviously cannot roll it all out at the same time. So divide it into 4. Becomes pretty close to 1/4 of the dough. You want to keep just enough flour on the board so that it doesn't stick. And keep flour on the rolling pin so it doesn't stick to the dough. And we're just going to roll it out into a circle. Just trying to get this edge a little bit thinner maybe. Alright, it's not a perfect circle, doesn't need to be. And then this is going to be divided up four ways, but I've never really just divided it like I did the dough. But just put a good spoonful on, and with a knife, just going to spread this all around. It's just going to be a thin layer of goodness. Okay, then we're just going to start at the end here, and we're just going to roll it into kind of a jelly roll, yes. This is what gives the rolls to look when they come out because they are in a spiral with the. And I just always take it, pull it a little bit. These ends are always a little bit thinner, but that's okay. So since there's 12, a dozen rolls, then I just divide this into 12 pieces. So if I just cut it, just eyeball it, make this the middle, and then another, it's white, it's thicker here in the middle, so maybe not quite to the fourth. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 6. And I've heard of some people cutting these with dental floss or string, but knife works. Okay, now these ones on the end, they're going to be kind of small, but they're actually some of my favorite rolls. And then you can see there's the orange right there, all rolled up in it. And these are all going to be different sizes. Somebody told me once works better if they're all the same size. But when you roll it out, it may or may not all come to be the same size. That's okay. Okay, now I'll do that 3 more times.